Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamone, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self-acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories, along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Today, I have a special guest with us, Jana Wellemeyer. She has been all over the country, everywhere from Alaska to Texas to Oregon. So she's well traveled. Her husband's been in the Coast Guard. She's a stay-at-home homeschooling mother of three and a wife to a retired Coast Guard veteran, her husband. Her experience has shaped her perspective on life. After enduring multiple miscarriages and a stillbirth, she struggled with overwhelming pain and anxiety while trying to maintain daily responsibilities. She's learned that healing is not linear and that she's embraced various methods like the grief recovery method, shamanic teachings, and Reiki to support her healing journey. These works not only helped her find joy and meaning, but have also fueled her passion for guiding others through their healing paths. By providing compassion and a safe space, she assists her clients in addressing unresolved issues, fostering peace and happiness. It would be an honor to guide them along on their healing journey. Jana, I want to welcome you onto the podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here with you today, Chris.
Likewise, and I'm really excited to have you on the podcast for many reasons, but one, as I like to share with people that have listened to my podcast before, I always say we're part of a club nobody wants to be part of, and it's very, very hard to be a lost parent, and always have that as part of your journey. I wanted you to share a little bit more about your story with the audience so we can get to know you a little better.
Well, like you said, I am a stay-at-home mom of three. We got a couple of dogs. A lot of my hurt is what led me to be a homeschool parent. I wanted to live every moment I could with my kids. That's part of why we travel. We live in our RV so that we can show the kids the world and everything that a lot of people miss out on. We kind of lose the joy in everyday simple tasks, kind of living the mundane life of, go to work, come home, do all the same things. And in a grief journey as strong as a child loss, even a parent loss, you kind of just learn to see life a different way.
I'm really glad you said that because something I've learned, being a lost parent is there's a lot of things in our life before we go through a stillbirth or even miscarriage at that point that we get so caught up, like you said, in the everyday minutia of going to work, doing this, doing that, and we're flying by life. And when something like that happens to us, I mean, it really is like somebody just hit the brakes at 100 miles an hour and all of a sudden you're kind of going, okay, 95% of what I thought were problems in my life are not problems anymore. I'm good.
Absolutely.
So I have to ask too, by the way, because I see people online do this. What is life like living in an RV with a family? As I've seen people do that really well online.
Honestly, you usually see the highlight reels, of course. It can be trying because you're taking people, well, okay, like us, there's 5 of us and we're in a 40-foot space now. So you are used to being in, a 2,000-foot house where everybody has their own room and you do your own thing and you have your own TVs. And now you're all in basically one room and you have to learn to get along. So it can be trying. But again, that's what I said. I think we've lost our patience with people as in general. And this was our way to grow as a family, to say this is what's important. And so it's been, like I said, it's been trying at times, but for the most part, we love it. Absolutely love sharing everything with each other, every experience, every tough day. It's easy to walk through things and have conversations that we normally wouldn't.
I really love that because I think it's a unique way, like you said, we're all used to living in our big houses and having separate spaces and being in an RV, like you said, it's a confined space and it's really like one giant common area. So it kind of leads to those better conversations, sometimes testing and trying, as I'm sure it's been. But I just think that's a really unique experience that not a lot of people get to hear about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to get to know your family and yourself, to be honest.
So I wanted to ask you as we jump into the podcast today, share a little bit about your story, having miscarriages and having a stillborn, because I know that I've talked to a lot of lost parents that have gone through that, and everybody's had a very unique experience with that. But it's also a very trying thing that happens, but it's also something that leads us onto a different path in life that's oftentimes comes with a lot more fulfillment.
Yeah, mine actually, I've had, several miscarriages, but in there I was also to have able to have one son. Then I had some more miscarriages, and then I had my stillborn. Then I had um, another couple miscarriages till we figured out a few answers, hopefully, as the doctors would call it, that led to another son. And then I had a miscarriage after him as well. So early on, the miscarriages were absolutely devastating because that was your goal, that was your happiness. You go into the doctor for the first time, you're excited to see your baby up there on the ultrasound screen, and doctors are scurrying around and asking you a million questions and leaving the room and coming back and never truly saying much until it's I'm sorry, you've lost this, here's a pamphlet, call me, let me know what you want to do. And at that point, through this, I lost my faith in the medical community because I was like, there's no compassion in this. You didn't tell me anything, you didn't show me anything, you just, oh, I'm sorry, here's a pamphlet, we'll figure it out the next step, it's fine. Then fast forward through other miscarriages, and you just kind of lose the sense of any kind of hope in any pregnancy. It became, sure, I'm pregnant, but I'm not going to get my hopes up, we'll see how far along we make it, or if we make it. And each doctor would give you the, oh, well, you just got to make it to 8 weeks, or you just have to make it to the end of the first trimester. And so you get up that, okay, now I made it to this, I made it to the first trimester, yay, I can start hopefully being okay with this idea of being pregnant. So then with like my stillborn, I had some complications along the line, and again, the medical field kind of failed me. Each time I went in asking for help, at that point they were just tagging it on to, oh, you're anxious because you've had miscarriages and you're worried, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. The further along I got, okay, well, we're getting further, it should be okay, you should be okay. And then you never know, because I went in on a Friday and the doctors were kind of, oh no, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. I was anxious. I was like, no, I know something's going to happen this weekend. It's time. I'm going to get birth. Something's going to happen. No, no, you're fine. You're fine. And he's like, well, okay, since you're worried, I'll schedule you Monday so you can come in, and that might help ease your anxiety. So when I went back in on Monday, the heartbeat was gone. And that was a full term. And that took away any hopes in any pregnancy of any enjoyment. I then further after that, like I said, I had a couple more miscarriages, and I knew at that point, I was like, nah, it won't happen. But then when I had my next son, Jeffrey, the whole pregnancy was chaos, even to the last day, is not knowing, is he really going to come out? Is he going to be okay? So even after he came out, it became a whole new battle of, okay, well, now there should be something wrong with him, right? Like, I had a kid, but there's got to be something wrong with it. I'm not supposed to have kids. So it just was such a horrible battle, I guess, mentally, not having medical field to support the mental side of what happens to us in child loss would probably be my biggest battle.
I agree with you on that, because that was one of the hardest things I dealt with when I lost my son. Is they just said, well, we just don't know. And I said, well, how do you not know? I said, there's got to be a reason. There's got to be some explanation. There's got to be something. And it was always just this, well, we don't know. And I would go dig research, by the way, just because of curiosity I have. And it was always just like, oh no, it's not that. Oh no, it couldn't be that. And I'm going, well, babies just don't die because of no reason. That's just
Yeah.
not how it works. Like, so I really share that empathy with you that, I lose respect for the medical community a lot because, like you just said, it turns into this, well, we just don't know, but here's the process we go through, and this is just what happens. And they leave out that side of mental health for women and men at the same time that, when we're not taking care of that, when we have that loss and we just don't understand why, we're always left with that thing that eats away at us to say, well, we just now went through losing a child, but we don't have a reason. We don't have an understanding or an explanation.
Well, and even during my process of my stillborn, um, when I showed up at the hospital, my husband was actually out to sea on deployment at the time. So I was by myself. I advised not to medicate me because I wanted to feel the whole process. I wanted to know what was going on. And they went against my wishes and medicated me. I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
realize that until I got the bill. I knew I felt extremely tired, and I had asked, like, is it okay for me to go to sleep? Like, this feels weird. Oh, yeah, you're fine. And then I found out that they had given me, the drugs to calm me down because they just thought I was too anxious and that I wouldn't want to remember it.
Mm.
Um, then further on, after he was born, they let me hold him and take pictures and anything like that. But they just wrapped him in a blanket and left him over on the counter like it was nothing. They didn't send
Wow.
anybody to talk to
Mm.
me. They didn't show any care. They put this little angel placard above the door on the outside to signify to everybody else that he had passed, and that also signified to leave me alone. After that happened, I didn't see anybody else through the rest of the night. It was the longest night of my life. Sitting in a hospital wondering what the heck is wrong with me.
Jana, I'm really sorry that you had that experience. That's awful. Just from a lost parent to a lost parent, that's awful. I'm really sorry that that happened to you. Can I ask you if it's okay? Did you name your son?
I did. His name is Jesse.
Jesse. Oh, I love that.
Today would actually be his 6th birthday.
Oh, so that was 6 years ago.
Yep.
Wow. And I wanted to ask you, on the other side of that, I know that sounds like that was a very isolating moment and time for you, and I can't even fathom how hard that would have been to have to go through that. But I know I'm sure your husband was there to support you, but did you guys have other family around or other friends that were there to help you out in that moment?
At that time, honestly, he and I were struggling. Like I said, he was out to sea, and so he wasn't available to be there. I had my mom and dad that were close by. So
Mm.
after I got the news that there was no heartbeat, I had my mom and dad come up to the hospital to grab my other son because at the time he was about 2.5. I knew he didn't need to spend the evening in the hospital with me. So they did come grab him and take him back home. We lived about an hour and a half from where the hospital was. Um, I was lucky enough that I did have one good nurse friend that had reached out to me because everybody knew I was at the hospital and everybody was excited for a baby. And so I had posted, I'm sorry, but he's stillborn. And she reached out and she found out I was by myself. She did come up and sit with me for about an hour, and forever lives on because I'm so grateful she did. After that, like I said, there literally was nothing. I asked to stay over the night because I knew I couldn't drive that distance in the dark to go home. That was another shocking, feature. As soon as it was over, it was like, okay, you're done, you can go. And that was it. I'm like, okay, well, I don't feel like I can drive. I'd rather wait until morning at least so it's not dark. Um, so I did. And then, going home was different because grandparents were expecting, baby and didn't have any idea what happened. Um, Eventually, Andy was able to actually get off the ship and come back out. And he came out to South Dakota where we were. And so I did have, that kind of really close family support. But being by myself through the entire experience, I think I experienced it differently. And nobody truly understood how lonely it was.
My heart's just going out to you right now because a lot of people that haven't lost a child just don't know the level of emptiness that hits you in that moment. And it's almost like everything goes quiet, everything goes still, and there's nothing really that people can say or even help you try to, that's why in the grief space, I have a hard time with hearing people say things like let go, move on, and life
Yes.
go. I have such a hard time with that because when you lose a child, those things don't exist. They're just not even on the table.
Well, even
It,
going home to a normal day as you will. Like, okay, well, you got to get up and, you got to feed your kids, you got to have breakfast, you got to do the normal activities. It's like it's all in slow motion. It doesn't seem real anymore.
That's a great way to describe that because I know when I lost my son, I felt like I was in some alternate reality. I felt like the world was going, I was just standing still. Like I wasn't able to connect with it for a
Yeah,
very long
exactly.
time. Is that kind of how you felt?
Yeah, and then, to further disconnect from the rest of the world, at the time I was working in a hospital setting as a nursing assistant, and I had been home 3 days when HR reached out to me to ask when I was coming back to work. I was like,
Wow.
I was so appalled. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, I literally just gave birth to a stillborn, and you want to know when I'm coming back? And at that point, that's kind of when I lost any kind of trust and ability to work for a normal, 9 to 5, work for somebody else, really, because I was like, I'm just a number to you. Like anybody, I would think any smaller business, especially, the town we were in is like 4,000 people. You know everybody there. You'd expect at least a little bit of compassion out of a situation like that.
Well, that's the problem with honestly most employers in the country. That's the problem is, a lot of people go through a very heavy loss and, especially with a stillborn, there's just this big gapping hole in your life now, and it's not going to get fixed in 3 days. It's not going to get fixed in 3 months. It's just not something that we're able to be wired that way as humans. We a lot of times I tell people grief is a matter of the heart. It's not a matter of the mind. And
Mm-hmm.
so people that are in that conscious space, and honestly, people that have not lost a stillborn like you and I have, don't understand that our whole world goes still. Our whole world goes quiet. Our whole life stops. And it's in a moment of our life that we just go, I'm not sure how to navigate this going forward. I don't even know what this looks like. And we constantly get dealt with triggers constantly throughout
Mm-hmm.
the world. I wanted to ask you about that because I struggle with that personally, being triggered on certain days. Has that been, what's that been like for you on part of your healing journey?
I would say it's not even just certain days. It was kind of certain phases throughout healing too. Like right away, um, I kind of isolated because I couldn't go out in public and hear a baby cry. I remember rushing out of the grocery store several times because I heard one cry and I was gone. Um, Other times it's kind of isolating because you don't want to have to explain things to people or even change who you are around certain people, I guess, too, because it seems like, you have those people rushing you like, oh no, it's okay, just it's another day, move on. And you want to talk to them, you want to grieve, but you feel like you can't. So you have to put on that false mask and smile and just be this fake person that you're not meant to be. And that kind of kills you too. Then it kind of went on to where I'd have a lot more good days and stuff where nothing really would trigger me, so to speak. But then without even knowing it, there was a lot of subtle cues that kind of mentally would kick in. I had two really good friends that also were pregnant at the same time that I was pregnant. And so I had created a huge closeness for both of their kids and I didn't even recognize it. I was constantly, checking on those kids and watching them grow and wanting to be around them and finally, recognize that connection of, oh my gosh, that's because my baby's this age. Um, I've had other experiences even lately where I was sitting in a chiropractor's office waiting for my appointment, and somebody came in with a newborn that had just a beautiful head of hair that looked just like my baby, and I lost it. I was like, what the heck? Why am I seeing this? This has been, forever ago, but it's always there. It never goes away.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because I have that same way. I really can't go to the stores after that first week after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I get I people think I'm nuts when I share this, but like I'll go in a store and the minute I see a little kid running around for a toy, it's like this blood rage starts running in me and I start getting very lit up emotionally, and I'm just like, I'm out. I can't
Yep.
be here. Like I just so I appreciate you sharing that because that's part of what a lot of people don't understand about lost parents is we're constantly triggered and reminded every time we go into public and see something that sets off that thing in our head. We can't control it. It's just a gaping hole in our story that we just can't fill.
Yeah, it's even events like other kiddos graduating from kindergarten or things. It's those hopes, dreams, and expectations that we had for our life and our kids that we don't get to celebrate. It has a lot of triggering value to it.
It does. I had to explain to a lot of people as I don't have any of these people back in my life for obvious reasons, but
Mm.
I got tired of having to explain that, I didn't just lose a son, I lost the whole life I had envisioned for this, and I was prepared to make massive changes in my life, and that went away in a split second. And so it's a lot of people don't know we're not just grieving our child we lost, we're grieving the future we planned for them and where our life was going to go. And
Oh,
so
absolutely.
having to refigure that while you're trying to grieve, and also, like you mentioned earlier in this podcast, having to explain these things to people that don't have our experience. And some people, because they haven't experienced something like that, just don't understand and can't really, they'll empathize to a degree, but they just won't get it the way we get it. And that's
Yep.
something I learned being around the lost community of parents, even going to events with lost parents. It was refreshing in so many ways. And I feel weird saying that, but when I talk to a parent who's lost a child like you and I have, it's just this look and this feeling of, I get you, I understand you, I see you, you're not crazy. Like it's comforting. That's where I'm going with that.
I love how you mentioned that you're not crazy, because it seems like everybody, medical field especially, that's the first push is, oh, you're just over anxious, you're overstimulated, all of this. It's like they can't really give you a definition other than, oh, well, you might need meds here to help calm you down. Like I even had a doctor when I first, let's see, probably about 6 months after I lost him, I went in and I could not control my thoughts. I couldn't, like, I could feel my heart beating all the time. I was super anxious. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And when I explained my story of what had happened, the doctor cried. And then she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. This is so unprofessional of me. And I was like, no, this is the first time I have seen one of you guys actually have a heart. It's like, more of you should do this. Like, thank you.
Yeah, that's the one thing I think we look for with doctors, especially in that moment, is for somebody to just have a heart. That's what we're looking for. We don't want to have, I think that's what's hard about the medical industry, and honestly, why I've lost faith in the medical community myself, is it's always take this pill. Oh, you're too stressed out. Oh, you just need to do this. Oh, you need to do that. And it's very like I'll call it careless is the way I phrase it, because there's no like empathy or understanding or compassion behind it. It's just very much like you said, like, okay, it's just another person with another thing, another symptom to chase. But nobody ever stops and says, what does this person actually need right now? And
Mm-hmm.
nobody ever really asks sometimes, how can I support you? Or what can I do for you right now?
Yeah,
A lot of people like us that are grieving in the lost community in particular, everybody wants to try to fix us and try to tell us to move on with life. And it's just those solutions and that fixer thing is just the worst thing you can do to somebody that's grieving,
absolutely.
because you're not holding space for them.
Yeah, it's definitely been a progress trying to heal. I guess ultimately, I always knew that I buried it all deep down and I wasn't dealing with it correctly, but I didn't recognize how much it affected my daily life. We were in Texas, and that was, let's see, Jeffrey was irrelevant, I guess. He was getting super sick and having all these health problems and stuff. And I knew it wasn't me. I knew there was something wrong with him, but taking him to doctors, they wouldn't listen to me, wouldn't listen to what his signs, symptoms were. They're just tacking it on to, you've had a loss, you've had multiple losses, it's just your anxiety, not going to deal with this. But I knew it wasn't me and I wasn't crazy. So I was like, okay, I'm done with my own BS here. I need to fix this. And that's when I came into dealing with grief recovery and trying to move forward. And just day one, walking into somebody wanting to help me heal, told me that this is my space. This is where I'm supposed to be, helping others heal, because there's not enough of us out here.
There's really not, and I'm actually really happy to hear that you've gone through the grief recovery method. I'm really happy to hear that because there's a lot of people that stay stuck in grief, and I don't blame them, by the way. I fully get it and I understand it. But I just, like you said, there's not enough of us out there that actually are able to hold space for those people. Because I truly believe that when you're stuck in grief, it's not because there's something wrong with you or there's a problem. I don't think that at all. But what I do think is that there's a lot of very heavy emotions going on, a lot of very heavy processing. And I do believe that those people don't need to be fixed, but what they do need is somebody to hold space for them, somebody that allows them to get those thoughts and emotions and feelings out, so that they can better process their grief. Because stuck in grief it's not a problem, it's not a negative thing. It just means you have a lot of very heavy things to process. And you might not be able to get there on your own, by the way. You might not be able to, and that's okay, by the way. There's nothing wrong with you. But finding that person there that can hold that space for you and listen to you and just ask, how can I support you? That's the best way to get unstuck from grief.
Yeah, absolutely. So many, even when they come in looking for help, just I think they're kind of at their last option as to, counseling didn't help and this therapist didn't help, and they just are defeated already because, well, everybody says there's something wrong with me. And like you said, no, there's absolutely not anything wrong with you. It's just natural human emotion that's got to come out. And sometimes you need a little guidance on exactly where some of it's coming from, because you don't recognize that you've had so many grief type events in your life building up to where you are now. I mean, just sitting down and thinking about all the grief that's happened in a person's life is usually an eye opener. Like, holy cow, I didn't realize I've gone through this many things. I think another big thing with that is, being that reinforcement to them too, and explaining that there's nothing wrong and that it's okay. This is a safe space for you to literally get everything off your chest without me judging you. And I'm not going to fix you either. So you just say whatever it is you need to say, scream it if you need to. And just having that option, I think, is a comfort. It's like a big hug. It's like, yay, I can finally do this. Yay.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of people need. One of the hardest things, I watched my wife go through when we lost our son is, for many, many months, she said, I feel like I failed or my body failed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feel like I did something wrong. And I could not, it was so hard for me to hear that because it was out of her control. Like I kept telling her all the time and said, I can't blame you for this at all. I can't. It's ridiculous and preposterous to even think that. And I kept trying to say, your body did what it did naturally. It's just how this works. And it doesn't mean doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That's the complete opposite of what's going on here. But I wanted to ask you, and you don't have to share if you don't want to, but did you have thoughts like that when you went through that, or did you find ways to challenge yourself, when those thoughts did come up?
That was actually one of them that I have more recently discovered was a huge thing for me. I didn't put that connection together um, until I started doing some of like the shamanic teachings and some of the other healing modalities, talking to other women that have been in loss. And one of the ladies that was in one of my courses mentioned that she had completely lost her intuition, her natural intuitions on how we as women kind of are born to deal with things in life. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I felt, is because I didn't feel that I could trust my body. I didn't feel that I could trust anybody else to explain anything to me. And I had lost the ability to even, cook meals or plan to go to the grocery store. All of the things that I was normally able to do suddenly seemed like really hard tasks. And I didn't understand why. And it was because I had lost that intuition being able to trust that I could make a decision and I knew it was right, because I had the doctors telling me, oh no, it was okay and this was okay, always not letting me follow my intuition, knowing that something was wrong. And so that was a huge one. And so trying to heal that has been a lot of work.
Well, that's what I noticed with my wife, and I told her a lot, and I still tell her today, is just that I'm a firm believer that doctors are never going to know a woman's body as well as a woman will know her own body. That's just
Hmm.
my own personal belief on that after what I've experienced. And
Hmm.
I do think that I mean, women are the ones that bring life into this world, and it's such a beautiful gift, by the way. Even though you and I had stillborns, I will still say it's a beautiful process to watch a
Yes.
new baby come in the world. And so I just think too that, I wish we would put more emphasis and more focus on talking to women who are pregnant and asking them questions like, what are you feeling right now? How are you feeling? What's your body trying to tell you right now? Are you feeling like this is something happening sooner? Is it happening later? Asking those thought questions about where her body's at. Because I've talked to multiple women that have had stillbirths, and the common thing I've heard, so I'm glad you and I are talking about this, is every single one of them has said, my body tells me when
Hmm.
things my body says when something's off. My body says, hey, this baby's ready to come out. My body's telling me while this process is going to go. And so, that's why, again, I love, honestly, that you don't trust the medical community as much as a lot of people do. I'm glad you don't, because nobody's going to know that process for you and your body as well as you do.
Well, like I said, with all of the stuff that I went through with them, I mean, they've given me no reason to even offer trust as an option anymore. Early in my pregnancy, I was already considered high risk, and the doctors just kind of blew that. Well, no, it's okay. You'll be fine. We'll just keep you here. One of my other big gripes with them, especially in OB type community, is it used to be where you had one doctor that followed you through the entire pregnancy. Like, you actually made a relationship with this doctor who was going to be your delivery doctor. And so it made it a little bit less stressful knowing one person and they knew your story. This time it was like, no, you can see any doctor all the time up through here, and then finally right before delivery we'll transfer you to one that's going to actually deliver your baby. And so every time you went into a doctor, it was trying to re-explain your story for every appointment. Okay, well, I've had this and I've had this, and they just wouldn't listen. It's just they wouldn't even really read your chart or anything. It got so overwhelming. But there was so many things. Even the doctor that I had, she she was focused on her wedding, to be fair. She
Mm.
was from India, and she was so focused on flying back and forth to get prepared for her wedding that even on times when I would have problems, like I had some bleeding, and I know during a pregnancy that's never okay, even though sometimes they lessen it. Oh no, it's okay, it's normal. No, it's not. I went in on an emergency type thing, and then they canceled other appointments, and they just constantly, no, no, you're fine, you're fine. I'm like, would you check things out? Like, she even found a time doing an ultrasound where she had a really low heartbeat, and she's like, oh no, he's probably just sleeping. And I'm like, that's awful low, like 116 versus 156 normally. That's kind of weird for me. So I throw all these red flags out, and it's like, oh no, no, you're fine. Why should I trust you guys ever again?
I don't blame you with that. That's a prime example, like I just said, women know.
Yeah.
You're like you said about your intuition. Your intuition knows when something's off, and that's something we should be paying attention to, not brushing off. And I think
Hmm.
that's and I try to remind people too, the medical community in general, by the way, that what they tell you is not always right, because what they're referring to, by the way, is data collection samples of, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. But what they leave out is in that set group they test everything in, 5% of people are going to have this adverse reaction or this adverse thing happen.
Yep.
And so that collective mentality of don't worry about it, it's okay, it's normal, it's not.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
um, Jana, I wanted to ask you a powerful question too, as we wrap up the podcast here. What's the biggest thing that has changed for you after going through grief, and how has it changed you as a person?
I guess I would say the amount of empathy I have for the world. You kind of look at everybody completely differently. You know, when somebody snaps at you, when somebody's angry at the grocery store, you can't help but think, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you're going through. I'm so sorry. Instead of just biting back and arguing and fighting. It's just a whole different way to look at everything.
I love the way you said that because that's exactly what's happened to me after going through this. I see a lot of hurt people out there, and my wife has this phrase that I love, and I like to share it because I like to give her credit for things. Is she said, hurt people all the
Yep.
time,
Yep.
and after we go through a major loss in our life, and for me that was losing a kid, that all of a sudden I started saying, okay, you know what, we're gonna walk away from that mentality and not join the crowd with that. Um,
Yes.
and now I start seeing people that are hurt. They've got something happen in their life that they're not facing or dealing with. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that in the grief community in particular, and as I see a lot of people walking around with grief carrying around, and they oftentimes take that out on people all the time. I see it a lot. And a lot of times when somebody's very angry, like you said, in the grocery store, or they're rat racing around in a hurry, those of us that have gone through a severe loss have that change of empathy, and we start saying, it's okay if I'm late 5 minutes. Doesn't matter. Like I can't control how fast the checker's going to get us through here.
Exactly.
I'm okay with it. Um, I think a lot of people, will be empowered by your story today, by the way. But you're a prime example of that. Just taking that control back into your life and just saying it's not got to go outward anymore. I'm done living that life.
Yep.
I know what I value. It's very different, but I don't need to treat other people that way. And I've got empathy to understand that people are going through things, and I'm going to be the one person that changes that.
Absolutely. Every day.
So, well, Jana, this has been awesome to talk to you today. I'm very, very grateful for you to be on the podcast. I think you're a prime example of what it means to go through an empowered grief journey. And I think Jesse put you on a whole different path in life that you didn't see coming.
He did. Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up the podcast, I usually ask two other questions. The one is that if you were to run into somebody who's going through grief or feels stuck in grief, what's one thing you'd share with them to help them navigate that journey just a little bit easier?
I think kind of my takeaway is don't give up. Trust your natural instincts and keep moving forward. Your circle that's going to help you heal is out there. You just have to find them.
That's beautiful advice because that's something that I encourage people as well to say, there's safe people in this process that are going to hold space for you and listen to you and help you and guide you. There's going to be people that just aren't that for you. And
Yep.
don't spend your time too much time around the unsafe people, but go find your tribe, just like Jana just shared. There's going to be people out there. There's lots of groups and Facebook. For us in the lost community, there's ways for us to connect with lost parents. But if you've lost a father or a mother or a family member, if you've lost a friend, if you've lost a job, or you've, even lost yourself to some degree, as I always say, grief can also be about losing yourself and trying to reestablish self-identity.
Mm-hmm.
There's groups out there, people walking that path like you, and they want to connect with you. So Jana, that was beautiful advice you gave.
Thanks.
And then I wanted to also ask you, people enjoy listening to your podcast today. Where can they find you?
They can find me on my website, janawellemeyer.com, or on any of the social media platforms just under my name, Jana Wellemeyer. I'd love to be able to connect with people and help them on their healing path, or just be that listening heart if they need somebody to chat with.
I love that. And for our listeners today, in the show notes of the podcast, Jana's links will be in there so you guys can connect with her. I definitely want to encourage you guys to reach out to her and get connected. She's an awesome grief coach in the grief space. And as you guys heard today on her story, Jesse put her on this path to go out there and help serve other people and help them navigate grief. Because as you guys heard today, Jana didn't have that support when she went through that loss and had to navigate that by herself. And now she's out there doing something much bigger than herself, which is helping other people in that grief space get the support that they need. So, Jana, thank you for being a contributor in the world in that space because we do need more people like you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris.
Well, I want to thank our listeners today for joining Jana and I on this episode of the Empower Grief Journey. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Jana's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you during your grief journey, visit empowergriefjourney.com. and subscribe to this podcast. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. You're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.